So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the front sight on this 1911 slide. And this is not a dovetailed, this sight is not dovetailed in. This is what they call a staked in. There you can see that. This is a staked in sight. And somebody cut this off and they tried to make a patchwork sight out of it, which is a bad idea. So we're going to remove this. We'll put a new sight on. It should be an adventure. Put a little painter's tape on here to protect the finish so I don't mar it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my parallel jaw pliers. I'm actually going to break off the old sight. That's probably the easiest way to remove it. And then what I'll do is I'll break this off and then we'll just try to knock it in from the top. So it comes right off. So there's that remaining piece of sight just fell on the floor. But so now we've broken that off. What we'll do is we'll just tap that in. So I'll get this in my vise. We'll tap that through, and we'll replace with a new one. All right, so I have it in my, I have the slide now in my vise, and I've got an appropriate size punch. I'm just going to knock that, what's the remainder of that sight in. Use my brass hammer. I don't want to peen that over. Making any progress? All right, so we got the old sight out. We're just kind of going to test the new sight, make sure we have the right size stake. And it's going to, we'll be able to knock that in. I can see that or not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little heavy duty Loctite on there. This is the high strength Loctite, the 262. I'll put that on there. Then we're going to knock this in, and then I'm going to go in on the inside and use a special tool and peen that out and flare it so it stays staked in place. So I'm just going to take a little bit of alcohol. Just make sure I've got an oil-free surface. So the Loctite sticks. I just want to clean it up. Make sure we get a nice clean surface for that Loctite to stick to. We'll use that dry end of the Q-tip to clean that up. All right, let's put a little red on there. Just a drop. We'll let that sit for a minute. And this is that 262. This is the heavy duty Loctite. It's not going to want to come off. And we're just going to tap that in. And I'm using a brass punch, so I'm not damaging the sight any. We'll get that right. We'll get that seated. Now we'll come in from the inside and we'll use that staking tool. is flush. All right, so now what I need to do is I need to come in from the inside and flare the top of that stake out, like mushroom it, so it stays in place. And this is what's called a staking tool. This is just for that purpose. What I'll do is I'll line this up in there. I'm going to strike this with a hammer, and that'll flare that sight out so it stays in that little hole there in the slide. But you're going to need a 1911 staking tool. All right, so I have the front sight top down. That base of that little peg is sticking up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my tool to flare it, and it won't come out. All right, so what we've done is we've mushroomed the base of that sight. We've expanded it so it won't come out of its groove. So between that press fit, the red Loctite, and now that mushrooming, that sight's not going anywhere. It's staked in place. It's the staked front sight. It's got a little bit of resistance here. It's sticking up a little bit above. We can't get our bushing in there. So I'm going to take a Dremel, and I'm just going to kind of kiss the top of that and just make it level so the bushing will go in. All right, so I've got my Dremel tool, and what I said, I'm just gonna kiss the top of that, which that was the bottom of that sight. Just give us enough room to put the bushing back in there. We'll test fit that bushing. Yeah, we've got a little bit more to go. There we go. Now we know our bushing will go back in. Like I said, we just kind of kissed the top of that with the Dremel. Just took a little bit of that, right, hammered it. The bushing is to slide right back in. We'll put this all back together. We should have a new front sight. All right, with the higher front sight, that's going to require us to put in a higher rear sight. So this is dovetailed in. I'm going to drift this one out, and I have a replacement. I'm going to drift in the new one. These are dovetailed, so when you're knocking in dovetailed sights, always drive them out, right to left, drive them in, left to right. There's the old sight. And we'll turn this vise around. We'll put in our new sight. Okay, so we've got our higher rear sight, match our higher front sight. We'll take this to the range and we'll drift it right or left depending on where our point of impact is. All right, so we got our new sights on. We put on the taller rear sight. We did that front sight. It was pressed in. We hammered that in. We used the red Loctite. We used our staking tool that thing is not going anywhere. We had to put that taller rear sight in so they now match. We used our front sight staking tool, and with these higher, taller sights, and also a little bit wider, should be easier to see for older eyes. But that's how you stake a front sight on a 1911.